Hi guys, so today I'm coming back with my crazy life story, and today we're hitting on the ages 30 to 35 and things have been getting quite complicated, and they got further complicated. This period of time was quite a long one, so do pardon me if it seems a bit long-winded, but you know, there was a lot that happened in this short period of time. So after losing custody of my son, well, I needed to get myself clean. If I was going to keep my babies, I really needed to clean up my act and get sorted. So I returned home to my hometown of Southend to see my dad. I hadn't seen him since I was 16 and pregnant, and I hadn't seen him much before that, after I was 10 really. But I was always a daddy's girl, and I really needed someone who loved me regardless of my faults. Honestly, I think it saved my life going back there. I think that was the turning point where I decided I wanted to live and I wanted to make a better life for me and my children, make amends for my mistakes, or at least attempt to make amends for my mistakes and to have a better future. I loved spending time with him for 6 months, and then I returned to Cambridge to my sons in hopes of rebuilding my relationship with them and rebuilding my life. A lot of my drug issues were connected to my mental health and anorexia and self-harm. It was all sort of one big bundle of me trying to do my self-damage, I think. And I'd been like it for quite a long time without people even realising it. I needed drugs to boost me up. I was an upper addict. As a single mum, I was struggling, very much struggling. I didn't have the energy to get up and do everything that I had to do. I was running the household, I was doing the DIY, I was doing the driving, I was doing the fixing the car, I was doing the gardening. That I was spread too thin and I was exhausted, and that was a big part of what the drugs were about as well. It wasn't the right thing to do, but that's what happened. So, and I'm being honest with you about it all. I hope you understand that. I needed this energy that I wasn't getting naturally. I should have known that there was something more wrong, because I wasn't normal. I didn't feel the energy to get up and do all my normal mothering things without taking drugs. Of course, the nature of drugs is that you can't maintain that. The usage grows and the need grows with it. So it took a lot, especially as a single mum of young kids. To go straight was exhausting, and I had no one to rely on. My mum and stepdad were disappointed in me, and at the time pretty much wrote me off or argued with me every time I saw them. Little did they know that these upsets would often be the thing that would knock me off the wagon that I was holding on to for dear life, you know. They sort of have a go at me, and I'd go and get high because I couldn't cope with how I felt. I knew that I'd done wrong at that point in time. I just was in that was how bad it was. It took a while to really get to living a normal life. Getting straight made it quite clear to me, though no one else at this point, everything wrong in my life was just constantly blamed on the drugs by everyone else. I had zero energy. I felt generally unwell non-stop. All winter long I would have chest infection after chest infection and asthma attacks. My asthma was suddenly out of control, and I'd never ever had any real struggles with my asthma, and all of a sudden it was completely out of control. I was constantly having asthma attacks. The carpal tunnel that I'd developed at 20, it was now like affecting both my left and right hand, and at times the pain would shoot up to my elbows or up to my shoulders, so I was completely unable to do basic things, like, because my hand would be completely dead and I'd be like trying to butter toast or whatever, and I couldn't do it. My hand, like, weren't working. I was struggling to brush mine or my daughter's hair. I was struggling to sleep, struggling to wake up. I was struggling with driving. I was in pain all the time, but I didn't understand how much pain I was really in. Eventually I was straight long enough for people to believe me for the most part. My anxiety was on the increase though. I would have anxiety attacks in public places and people would automatically believe I was back on the drugs. And I found that so frustrating. I mean, for a good 3 years I went through this battle of everybody just believing I was on drugs every time if I cried, I was on drugs. If I went out and partied, I was on drugs. If I, had a panic attack, it must be because of the drugs. And it got to that point where I was just like screaming at people, please help me. I was going to swear, but please help me, I'm in pain, I'm exhausted, I'm having a panic attack, it's not the drugs, I haven't taken anything, and they wouldn't believe me. And it was so annoying because I'd always been so honest about my drug abuse, except for to my parents. My parents were the only people I ever hid anything from, and most of the people that would sit there and castigate and point and say that it was because of the drugs, they were the same people that had been taking the drugs with me when I was doing them. So why the hell would I lie to them, But that is the way it is. No one trusted me anymore, no one believed me anymore, and it felt pretty much like no one gave a damn anymore. In March 2011 I was booked in to have my first carpal tunnel surgery on my right hand. I can see the scar there. It was a much more difficult recovery than I expected. It was quite some time before I healed fully, needing 3 courses of antibiotics. It became clear as the wound healed that my hand was still painful and I was struggling with weakness, and I wasn't getting much better than what I'd been like before the carpal tunnel surgery, which was, I was expecting it to be like the miracle and I'd be alright. During this year I made the decision to start an open university degree to become a youth drugs counsellor. Something I'm still proud of now, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I went to university for, and I wish I'd been able to carry on or go back after it all and carry on, but obviously life has took over. At this time I started out of the blue having severe gallbladder attacks, waking up in raging pain and sickness. Within weeks they were coming every day, and I kept going to the accident and emergency department begging, I was literally begging for them to help me. Please take my gallbladder out, just do it now, I know something seriously is wrong with me, I'm in agony, blah blah blah. There was one large stone blocking the bile duct. They found it on ultrasound. The hospital were definite that I should wait for elective surgery. They said that it was safer to wait for elective surgery rather than having it done as an emergency. I think this was a massive error in the judgment by those doctors. If I could go back in time now, I would probably sue them after what happened. I was so sick with so many symptoms, and blood tests were showing that I was really quite sick, and my GP tested me for everything like hepatitis and HIV, because he said I was showing signs as if I had something seriously wrong with me, but they didn't find what was wrong with me. They were I think they were busy testing me for the hepatitis and the HIV. See, they were looking at me as being the drug addict and the mental health patient and all this. Never once did it occur to anyone that there might be something actually physically wrong causing me all these symptoms all my life. All of the hepatitis and HIV tests obviously came back clear. In February 2012 I started my first year at university and underwent gallbladder surgery after 6 months with it swollen and infected inside of me. I can't see how no one realised that all this was clear signs that my entire health was a problem. Months on antibiotics at a time can't have been good either. I've spent more time on them than off them ever since. The surgery was meant to be 45 minutes and I was expected home by dinner time. I was still in surgery several hours later. It was explained to me the next day my gallbladder had been swollen and infected so long. I don't know if you know that the gallbladder is here and on top of the liver, yeah. It sits sort of under your ribs. And when it was swollen all the time, I could feel it pushing my ribs. That's how bad it was, and that's why I kept begging for help, because it was really, I felt like as if my ribs were going to burst it or something. It had been infected and swollen that long that it glued itself into my liver. I told them over and over that this was more extreme than they thought, that I could feel the swelling beneath my ribs, that I was in agony every day and unable to eat anything without triggering an attack. Doctors thought they knew better about my body than I did, till they opened me up and found out I was right. They had to remove that section of my liver, which is okay, right? Because the liver, it regenerates itself, doesn't it? It regrows. So it should be okay. That was as if, they actually said it to me, oh, it doesn't matter because the liver regrows. But, of course, Nothing's ever simple. This area where they had to cut through happened to include a main artery, and I bled out on the table. The surgeon said all the surgeons came to assist with me and operations were cancelled because of me. I woke up heavily drugged on morphine with oxygen on. Interestingly, as a point, my lungs were showing signs of distress here. They had to put me on oxygen and everything during the operation. But this wasn't pursued any further. It was never looked upon as like maybe that there's something actually wrong with her constantly. I had tubes and wires coming out of me all over the place. I had a drain coming out of me. It was the middle of the night. I was meant to be home and on the road to recovery by then. My university course had begun 10 days prior and I needed to be on the ball to get my first assessments in. My friends Joe and Dal were looking after my 2 younger children for me. By this time my older sons were visiting me often, and Declan was going through troublesome teenage years and was really quite dependent on me at the time. Though he legally lived with his dad as residency order, he was often like I'd see him every day mostly, and you know, he was highly dependent on my support. Carlin always has and always will be a young man who prefers to be by himself. He focuses on what he likes to do, and he's a quiet person. You know, he likes his time alone. I've not seen as much of him as I would like to have since he was 12 years old, which breaks my heart. He very sensibly and understandably hates drugs, and as my eldest, he probably saw and understood the most about my mental breakdown and drug abuse. He was very, I think, you know, when he was born and before everything went wrong, we were so close. And I know I let him down. Believe me, I've taken the consequences of my actions more so than most of the people I've ever known. I really have took the consequences of my actions. I've seen a lot of people get away with a lot worse and they've never lost their families. It was the kick up the arse I needed, admittedly, but it still and always will be something that completely broke my heart to lose my sons. My children still needed me alive, and well, here I was in hospital. I think I knew then that there was definitely something medically wrong with me. Being diagnosed and treated for my mental health issues had hidden that something real and physical was going on with me. I've had enough routine and simple surgeries to know that this was not meant to happen. It took a further 6 months to recover, with more infections and writhing in agony on the floor for weeks after the surgery. I never really did recover. I never felt well again. I was on a nasty slope and it wasn't self-induced, or was it? After my first year, I finally got through my first year of university and I was a complete wreck by then. Absolutely wrecked again. My head was in the clouds, and I obviously I was unwell. I had a relapse into some drugs again. It was bad. I couldn't cope. There was too much. I put far too much stress on myself doing the university degree, and with all the health conditions, and with all the issues going on with my family life and everything. It was just far too much. But that was only a short-lived relapse. Obviously, once I'd started getting some headway with my diagnoses, I felt able to give up the drugs because I finally knew what was wrong with me and why I felt like I did. Next, we'll be going on to the 35 to now age group. I hope you'll join me for that. I hope you'll have a look back at the other videos that I've done that were leading up to this, all the way through my life. It's a very complex story, I know, but it's what happened to me. And I know that there's lots of you out there. I've heard a lot of you guys telling me your side, what's happened to you, and I feel less alone. You know, all of us have got some pretty crazy lives going on, yeah, and we can't change it. We can only get through it and keep going and keep plodding along and keep trying to smile every day and give love. So much love to you all, and breathe easy, folks, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.